Hi, everybody, and welcome to Witness TV. I'm Al Ganoza with the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference.
And I'm Rachel Bryson with the Diocese of Harrisburg. We're so happy that you are joining us today for our inaugural show of Witness TV. And Al, I know we've got a jam-packed show for our first one.
Yeah, now, the PCC, we deal with legislators and, of course, legislative issues. So we will deal with the laws and the issues that affect you as Catholics and the lawmakers that make them.
And here at the Diocese, we're all about the ministry and showing the love of the church. So we're going to talk a lot about our parishes, our schools, and our ministries, and showing all of that good work that's going on throughout the Diocese of Harrisburg.
Now, coming up today, I have an interview with a couple of lawmakers, one in particular about the Down Syndrome Protection Act, which passed last month, was then vetoed by the governor. So I have that coming up.
And here at the Diocese portion, we're going to talk with Father Jonathan Sawicki, and he is the Director of Vocations for the Diocese. He's going to give us some insight about Advent and what the season of Advent actually is. We also caught up with one of our high school students who recently met President Trump and had a roundtable session with him. And then we're going to introduce you to Christmas Around the World. And we'll talk about that new initiative that just started here at the Diocese. So definitely a jam-packed show today, Al.
Okay, and let's get to it.
Well, thank you all for joining us. We do have a very special guest in studio with us today. It's Father Jonathan Sawicki. He is the director of our vocations office here at the Diocese. Well, thank you, Father Sawicki, for joining us about a very important topic, which is Advent. And I know Advent, we're in the Christmas season, and Advent sometimes is kind of forgotten among the hustle and bustle of getting ready for the celebration of Christ's birth. So can you explain to us, what is Advent?
Certainly. Advent, the literal word Advent means arrival. In the ancient Latin was this arrival of a royal official or the king's representative or the king himself. So it means arrival or coming. And in the church, in the Christian churches, we celebrate Advent as the 4 weeks before Christmas. But there's a twofold focus inside the church's understanding of Advent. The secular world might think, oh, it's an Advent calendar you're getting up for Christmas, and so they make Advent calendars for tea or for coffee or beer or chocolate. But we look at the Advent calendar as focusing on two things. The coming of Christ, yes, in history for that birth of Christ in the stable in Bethlehem, but really the overarching theme of the history of this season is the coming of Christ in mystery, that he would come again in glory to judge the living and the dead. Think of it this way, we're in the season of winter. Things are getting dark, they're cold, there's not much life out, vegetation, the trees are dead, the crops are already taken in. But right around the birth of Christ, things start turning live again.
Mm-hmm. So you said it's a time of, almost preparing for the coming of Christ.
Right.
Do you have any, suggestions for those who are joining us on how we can prepare, how we can use these 4 weeks or the season of Advent to prepare for Christ's coming?
Sure. The very first Sunday of Advent, the opening prayer of the Mass, the collect of the Mass, it talked about that we might be met, we are able to meet Christ with righteous deeds at his coming. So one of the greatest things that we can do is think about that term, righteous deeds. What does that mean? Does it mean that we have to be refocused on cooperating with the grace of Jesus Christ in our care for our neighbor? Is this the time that we begin to pray more, especially as a family? When I was a pastor of a parish in York, I encouraged my families to have a daily Advent Wreath prayer service, perhaps before the principal meal, before they ate breakfast, whatever they could get together and pray together as a family. So that way, from that prayer, the fruit that might come forth are those righteous deeds. And why? So that way they don't just stop on Christmas Day, but they become part of us. And that way, again, when we meet Christ, when he comes again in glory, we might be found with these righteous deeds as part of our very being. Mm-hmm. So that's called daily conversion. Another thing for Catholics, go to the sacrament of confession. Okay. One of the things I said to my parishioners and met with uproarious laughter was, folks, if it's been a while, don't worry, the yellers are dead. The priests who were not the kindest in confession, I really believe that our priests will meet you with compassion, with understanding, and as a fountain dispenser of the love and mercy of God. So that's another important practice that we have during the Advent season, is going to confession.
And one of the things you mentioned, and it's kind of a long-standing tradition of the Advent season, is the Advent Wreath. So can you give me any information on maybe what is the purpose of the wreath, or is there a deeper meaning, or is it just a decorative type
The
of
Advent
item?
wreath, so wreaths have been used for centuries, if not millennia, to symbolize infinity. Because where's the beginning, where's the end of a circle? So there's an understanding of the continuation of years, but yet the Advent wreath as we see them in our Catholic and Christian churches, because Lutherans, they originated in the Lutheran Church.
Okay.
Episcopalians, our brothers and sisters in the Episcopal Church, they use the wreath. I'm sure Methodists do. Many of our denominations here in the Harrisburg area use the Advent wreath. And it's interspersed by 4 candles. Sometimes they're all blue. Sometimes in the Catholic churches, what you usually see are 3 purple and 1 rose-colored candles. And so those 4 candles are interspersed for the 4 Sundays of Advent. And we coordinate the colors of the Advent wreath candles with the colors of the vestments that the priest wears. So there's a connection.
Okay, and you mentioned how the 4 candles in the Catholic Church, traditionally we have the 3 purple and the 1 pink or rose colored, match with the vestments. And there's a deeper meaning there. Can you go into that? And I'm specifically thinking about that rose colored candle.
So purple is often used as a sign of penance and preparation. We use purple as a color in the Catholic Church during Advent and then during Lent, these times of preparation before great feasts, namely Christmas and Easter. On the 3rd Sunday of Advent, there's a long-standing Roman custom or tradition of using rose-colored vestments, because it's kind of like purple on steroids, a very heated-up color of purple, because there's a nearness of Christ. The traditional opening hymn, entrance hymn of the Mass of the 3rd Sunday of Advent is called Gaudete, which means rejoice. That's the first word of that traditional opening hymn, rejoice. And so how else do you portray or picture rejoicing but a very lively color, that rose? And then during the Lenten season, it's Laetare, which also means rejoice.
Okay.
And so during the 4th Sunday of Lent, they use that rose color as well to kind of break up the monotony of your usual prayer and penance, to have a little bit of excitement. But then again, on the 4th Sunday of Advent, we go back to purple, very subdued. A lot of churches try to keep it subdued, so that way when people come back on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, you see the church decked out with all the lights and the trees, and especially the nativity scene.
Excellent. So we are just a few short days away from Christmas. And, before we wrap up here, Father, do you have any Christmas hopes or Christmas wishes for, those who might be joining us today? Anything you'd like to share with them?
My Christmas hope for our parishes is that they are able to provide the visitors, the people who might only come once or twice or 3 times a year, with a true welcome, a true sense of hope and belonging, and a great invitation that they might become part of that faith community to receive that spiritual nourishment every Sunday. And that's an invitation I would always give to our parishioners. Make this your spiritual home. I hope that we have warmly welcomed you and embraced you. I also hope that for our families, they might take that message of the Christ child, peace to people on whom his favor rests, that message of the angels to the shepherds, that message of peace might begin first in our family and then our local communities, our neighborhoods, and trickle up to our leaders, that we might try to be messengers of peace and work for that great cause of peace.
Thank you so much for joining us today,
Welcome.
Father. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Rachel.
Well, it's not every day you get to meet the President of the United States, but for Miles Slade Bowers, a junior at Bishop McDevitt High School, it is an experience he won't soon forget. Miles recently participated in the Educational Empowerment Roundtable with President Donald Trump. During the roundtable, Miles spoke about how school choice has had an impact in his education.
Well, hello everyone, my name is Miles Slade Bowers. I am a current student at Bishop McDevitt High School, one of the best schools in my home state of Pennsylvania. I would just like to take a moment to thank our leaders within the Trump administration and those such as Mike Torzai for their continuous work in advancing tax credit scholarship programs like the one that allows me to attend my school, with their work and their continued dedication and their devotion. School choice opens up doors that would otherwise be slammed shut. Just speaking as a perspective as a young African American male in a low-income neighborhood, it's more likely that I would be a dropout of high school or even in prison at this very moment than speaking before you, like all of you at this moment, just discussing the importance of education freedom for all children, despite zip code, despite background, despite race, and I believe that in conjunction with with school choice nationwide, available for all people, and also decisive and intentional investments into education reform, that we will see true change in our nation, that it will be just more than just one moment in life where it worked out for a few years, that this could be a true pillar and change. It could be the true foundations and the layering, and I believe that all American children again deserve a fair chance at education equality, and I just want to really thank you for your time and allowing me to speak.
What do you want to do after education? What do you want to do?
After my education, I plan to attend Penn State, one of the premier colleges in our state, and I want to pursue or study biology and minor in microbiology and biochemistry, and hopefully move on to med school and become a practicing psychiatrist.
Oh, that's good. I could use you. That's great. Great job.
Well, Miles told the president that he's planning to attend Penn State University and major in biology with a minor in microbiology and biochemistry. We all have favorite Christmas traditions in our families. It could be going to midnight mass with the entire family, maybe baking cookies, or even stringing popcorn on the Christmas tree. Well, recently, the Diocese of Harrisburg hosted its first Christmas Around the World event. Now, this event welcomed youth from across the diocese here to the Diocesan Center to experience Christmas traditions from various cultures. We heard from 3 guest speakers during the event of Christmas traditions from Peru, Nigeria, and Vietnam. Let's take a listen.
My parents were born in Peru. I was born here, so I kind of know some of the tradition or some of the cultures we have there. We have something called Black Christmas. It's more of how to keep our culture and how to make sure our children don't forget where we're from. For example, in Black Christmas, we have these kids dancing this type of dance called zapateo. The kids dance for hours, and the parents are the one gathering around, just clapping, and just make them to know that Christmas is more than just open gift or what Santa's gonna bring us. It's just more like having time with family, spending time together, and of course having the nativity scene, making sure that God and Jesus is first.
Christmas in Nigeria is actually a kind of a family event, because most times people come from villages all the way to Lagos, where Lagos is a city, where it's like New York. We call it the New York of Nigeria. So where you have a lot of activities, it's always fun to be there. So they travel all the way from their villages to come to Lagos to earn a living, to start a new life. And they stay in Lagos for years without going to see their, probably grandparents, back home. So Christmas is actually a time when all the hard work and all that in Lagos for the past 1 year, you see them taking it back home because they must travel to the village, to some of them, like let's say 40% of them, to see their parents, aged parents, their grandparents. So it's a time of kind of a reunion, between families.
Not many people in Vietnam are Christians, as I've mentioned earlier, but people still like to go to Mass even though they're not Christians, which is nice because that is still a long line of traditions for a family thing, for a family gathering, for a family event. Also to watch nativity plays and to hear the Mass, even though they may not be Catholic. All of the churches and some Christian homes will have a nativity crib, also known as creche, as we call it here too. But their creche, their nativity set, is very different from our traditional one here in America. We know that Vietnam is still a very poor country. It's still a third world country, right? So being a third world country, they don't have very many resources, finances to build things, to make things. But what they have, they make very well. So they put together these nativity sets here. Still, very nice, yet different, showing the custom and the tradition of the country. The people there don't often exchange gifts. They still exchange cards, Christmas cards and such, but they don't very much exchange gifts. Presents aren't very common, but they do gather together for different meals, and they do exchange different foods to different families.
Well, Christmas Around the World was hosted by the Office of Multicultural Ministries here at the diocese. Well, we all enjoy a good cup of coffee, and at the San Jose Cafe in Newville, that cup of coffee can actually help needy families in Honduras. Nick Higgins, a member of the Missioners of Christ, walks us through this new cafe. Let's take a look.
The Missioners of Christ is a lay community based in Virginia Beach, and we have a permanent mission in Honduras. So the heart of our mission, we say, is in Honduras, and we've been there for about 16 years. So at this point in the project, November last year was when I personally dreamed up this project, and then April was when the community gave the official approval to move forward. So this project's been really moving forward since April. I have been involved in the community for about 8 years now. I went on my first mission trip to Honduras 8 years ago. The community originally started in the Diocese of Richmond with just a bunch of youth ministers responding to John Paul II's call to the new evangelization. I found them online. I was a student down in Florida, just graduated, went on my first mission trip and fell in love. I lived in Honduras for 2 years. I went 8 years ago on my first trip and have gone multiple times, but finally graduated and went for 2 years. So I graduated with, I was in a PhD program and have 2 master's degrees, one in industrial engineering and then another in human factors psychology. God just made it clear to not get the PhD, to stop with a master's and go to Honduras. So April, the project got the initial push, and then over the summer, different volunteers have been coming and helping out, painting. Some students came and helped paint the walls, those shelves that you see there, and every week something new is happening. The more paperwork comes through, more volunteers come, every week it's progressing, thanks be to God. The exciting thing about this project, even before the building is ready, the money is already going to help the Hondurans. So just really grateful to the benefactors. And not just monetary support, but it's important that we're also walking with them spiritually. So the discipleship part is essential to this project. Newville itself, it's a small town in the middle of nowhere, 600 people more or less. We're right by the one stoplight in town. It has its charm. It's a beautiful little town. So hoping to provide a place that people can escape to for a few hours and have a cup of coffee, good conversation, and nourish their soul with a little bit of love.
If you would like more information on the San Jose Cafe, visit sanjosecafe.wordpress.com. Well, coming up next on Witness TV, Al Ganoza from the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference will join us to give us an update on recent legislative activities. Al?
Now, the state legislature has been in session fewer days this past fall than in years past, but a lot of those days were very busy. In fact, the last time they were here, the week of November 18th, they had 4 session days that were packed with action. A couple of them went past 5 o'clock. One of the big issues as far as we were concerned was the Down Syndrome Protection Act. That was passed by the House in May, passed by the Senate last month, but then quickly vetoed by the governor. Still, there was the sense that a lot had been accomplished. I talked with a sponsor of the bill, Representative Kate Klunk of York County, about that.
So I met a number of awesome people throughout the advocacy for House Bill 321, the Down Syndrome Protection Act. I met families from all over this great state of Pennsylvania and those living with Down syndrome literally all over the world. We were able to put an issue on the not only Pennsylvania stage, but really the national and international stage to make sure that at the end of the day, we are advocating for those individuals both inside and outside of the womb who are living with a disability, and in this case, Down syndrome. So it has been a true honor and a privilege to be able to advocate for these individuals, and I wear the governor's unfortunate veto as a true badge of honor for all of these individuals, and it really just goes to show that the fight isn't over. I've been receiving all kinds of emails, Facebook messages of thanks from families, again, all across, not only my district, but the entire state of Pennsylvania. So, you know, where the veto leaves off, we continue on in fighting for these individuals, and the fight is not over because one day there will be a governor, there will be a state legislature, a House and a Senate, just like we passed, to be able to pass a bill like this and ultimately have a governor who's willing to sign it. And I hope that that day is something that I will be able to enjoy here in Pennsylvania.
One of the other bills to get a lot of attention was the Sunday hunting bill. Now, the PCC did not take a stance on that like we did with the Down Syndrome Protection Act, but I figure, well, a lot of Catholics hunt, and it was a very interesting bill as far as the goings-on throughout the year. I talked with a sponsor, Dan Laughlin, a senator from Erie, and for him, this bill was a lot of years in the making.
It all started for me about 50 years ago when I asked my dad why we couldn't go hunting on Sunday, and he said, you know, that's just the way it is in Pennsylvania, son. And who knew that years later I'd actually have a say in changing that. So I worked on that for 3 years now, and when I first got here, some of the people that have been here a long time said, well, good luck with that, that'll probably never change. And so I feel pretty proud that we were able to at least take a bite out of that. It started out as 14 days, which would have been just about every Sunday during our hunting seasons, and it got negotiated down to just 3, so it's not, you know, it's not a huge difference for a lot of people, and I think, you know, overall, it's a step in the right direction, and I think it'll help license sales, and more importantly, there's a lot of young people that have very busy schedules, and this should help them get out in the woods. I would imagine that after a year or so of this being rolled out, they will realize that the sky didn't fall and it really didn't affect them, and I think some of the opposition to it will fade away.
I've had the chance to meet with a lot of lawmakers from Western Pennsylvania, including Representative Tim O'Neill, a freshman rep. He was the first Republican elected in that district after years of Democrats winning. It doesn't sound like it was a big change in voter registration. It was more, I think, that the voters are identifying with Republicans. I spoke with O'Neill about being the first Republican elected in that district.
One of the things about our area in Washington County, in the 48th district in particular, it really is a wonderful place because it doesn't matter what letters behind your name. We basically have the same viewpoints. We're generally conservative. We're generally God-loving and fearing, and the values from southwestern Pennsylvania are pretty similar across parties. So for me, it's really about representing our area, ensuring we do that well. I am a fiscal conservative. I do consider myself conservative as overall. And that resonates with the area regardless of what letter is behind your name. So I actually have a constitutional amendment that I've proposed that will require any overages in revenue to be deposited immediately into the rainy day fund to ensure that that money doesn't just go straight back into the whims of the legislature to dole out spending increases from year to year. I think it's an important measure because it's very easy to go through and spend the money because you have extra money coming in than expected, and this will prevent it to ensure that when we do have downturns, the state, the Commonwealth is in a good position financially.
Also had the chance to talk with Representative Bud Cook of Western Pennsylvania, and I remarked to him how it seems like legislators from out west seem to have been born and raised in their district. They might have gone away for the service or from a job, but they came back.
That connection, that sense of family, that sense of community still exists in the 49th. And I guess the largest concern that I have is many of our constituents don't realize how special that is. That's not everywhere in the country. In 2014, when I first did a bid to run for office, the average age, voting age of registered constituents was 58 years old. It has since dropped down to, I believe, about 53, somewhere in that neighborhood. So we have a tremendous amount of seniors, but we have that gap in there, and I'm starting to see that change. There are people that are moving into the district now and bringing the ideas. The other part that I share with people that aren't from the Valley is when I would go around knocking on doors to talk to the constituency, you would always get two questions. And the first question would be, where are you from? And growing up in the Valley, moving away and then coming back, I'm used to that. Well, it's meant as a question of endearment because they're trying to connect you. And the second question is they would immediately, and I don't care whether I was in the far reaches of Fayette County or down in West Beth near Amity, Interstate 79, they would normally know 3 people from my community. And if I didn't know one of those 3 people, it was a very short conversation.
All right, the House and Senate back in session this week. I'll keep my eye on things. House, I think, for 3 days, Senate for only 1 day, but we'll let you know what happens. All right, that was it for the first edition of Witness TV. We hope you enjoyed it. And Rachel, what about for the people out there who have some maybe questions, suggestions?
Sure, if you have questions or suggestions or ideas on future stories you'd like us to present, easy email address, communications@hbgdiocese.org. Go to our websites, visit the Diocese of Harrisburg website, hbgdiocese.org. And Al, I know your website is pacatholic.org. Yeah, so we'd love to hear from you. Again, from all of us at the Diocese of Harrisburg and the Pennsylvania Catholic Conference, thanks for watching.
Thank you.